Uh, no, you should be good. One is in the chat.
needs no introduction, but I'll actually ask him to come off mute, share a few words, tell us about your background, what you're doing, and what you're leading in the city of Chicago. Malcolm.
Appreciate you, Jeff. Extremely glad to be here. But how you all doing? As Jeff said, my name is Malcolm Fox. Born and raised in Chicago, Pullman neighborhood to be exact. I went to Phillips High School where I played football and went on from Phillips to Howard University, where I played college football. Was able to pledge the esteemed Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and do a few other things on campus prior to accepting an offer to work for McDonald's Corporation. So I currently work for McDonald's headquarters in Chicago, Illinois, with our global supply chain team. And in addition, I do a plethora of things in the city. I have a clothing brand, Gratitude Chicago, where I use fashion in my platform to emphasize the importance of showing gratitude in your everyday life. So whether it's through the clothes we create, the spaces we create, it's all about pushing our people to be more grateful. And through Gratitude Chicago, we do, like I said, a plethora of community service initiatives, whether it's pledging money back to students through the forms of scholarships, whether it's through mentorship programs. We just try to make sure we're playing our part in changing our city for the better and impacting our youth. So that's pretty much who I am. And yeah.
So you guys already hear why I have Malcolm here. This dynamic, right? From Chicago South Side. I think you were on what was the first city school to win a state championship in football, correct?
Very, very humbled. Not only the first, the only Chicago public school to win a IHSA football state championship. Yes, for sure.
And then you went off to the Mecca, to Howard University. What made you choose Howard? How did that process of you picking your college come about?
So I actually I started off my college career at Wesleyan University, which is a NESCAC school in Connecticut, which is, they call them baby Ivy League schools. So I wanted to go Ivy out of high school. I was committed to Harvard for a football scholarship, ended up losing it due to an injury. Wanted to still work my way back to the Ivy League, didn't end up getting there. And then I just turned to Howard. Howard was somewhere I always wanted to go. They ended up offering me for football. And it was just when I went and visited campus, it was just everything I wanted in a college. I got to see people that looked like me who were accomplishing things that I wanted to accomplish, right? I got to feel that support on campus, feel that the strive to keep going and to notice that my dreams were not too big. So that's what led me to chose Howard. It was a great experience. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And I definitely would motivate anyone to go to HBCU if given opportunity.
You made the choice after Howard to come back to Chicago. A lot of folks, when they go away, there's options, right? You hit the campus, you're in DC, you get to travel a little bit. What made you want to come back to the city and really get as involved civically as you've been?
So I left Chicago for college, right? Like I said, and then when I graduated from Howard, I accepted my role with McDonald's Corporation, and I was relocated to Denver, Colorado, actually for a year to work out of one of McDonald's corporate field offices. But I always wanted to get back to Chicago. This is where my family is. This is where I started my business at. And most importantly, this is where McDonald's headquarters is located, where I felt like I could really advance my career. And the reason I really wanted to come back to Chicago is because this is my city. This is where my heart is. I feel I'm in a position to use my blessings to put the next person or the youth in a position to succeed. And I'm really am focused. I think Jeff, you know me well enough to know that I really am confident that I can have an impact on the next generation. So I wanted to come back to Chicago just to be here, to be able to go up to Phillips. I'm really involved in my high school, really involved in multiple different organizations such as Chicago Scholars, just trying to play my role and impact the youth. So that's really, like I said, it's where my heart is. That's what really brought me back here.
Y'all, I know those of you watching out there, I don't even want to begin. I can't even undersell it. Like, when I tell you Malcolm is phenomenal and an excellent young leader, he represents the best parts of our city and our community, helps thousands of young people every year. And I think with that being said, as I think about like your career and landscape, maybe you could talk a little bit about like what you've seen in the employment landscape, and particularly for youth, for young people specifically. Like, what do you think about the current job outlook, the market, and how do you advise your friends and even family members that may be looking for work out there, what should they be looking for? What should they be doing?
So I think ultimately, I think it's an ample amount of jobs available. I don't think it's the amount of jobs available that's the issue. I think it's the lack of education and connections currently in the city that can help introduce the youth to fields that they may not necessarily be aware of. I didn't learn about my field. Like I said, I'm in supply chain. I didn't learn about supply chain until I was in college. And my college advisor pushed me to change my major to supply chain. And supply chain had a 99% job placement rate at Howard University, and I had no clue about it. So I think it's more so the lack of education and connections that come into play. Um, when I think about the advice I would give the youth is it's not necessarily about what you know, but who you know, right? And you have to your image is everything. You have to be out there putting yourself in the best position for someone to want to feel necessary to invest in you and to teach you different things. Like I can share a story. The way I got to supply chain, I'm confident to say I wouldn't be at McDonald's. I wouldn't be in supply chain if it wasn't for Chicago Scholars. When I was my sophomore year of college, I attended a resume workshop that Chicago Scholars hosted. And I stood up during that workshop, and I had just changed my major to supply chain a month ago. And I remember this story like it's yesterday because it's so, like I said, I wouldn't be where I am today without it. Stood up, gave my introduction, said my major was supply chain. A guy in the back of the classroom who was there to review our resume stood up and said, "Did you say your major was supply chain?" I said, "Yes." He said, "See me after today." So we went through a whole day of workshops. At the end of that class, I ended up going to introduce myself to the guy. His name was David Small. I reach out to David every now and then just to thank him for the connection that he made for me. But David had just retired from McDonald's. I want to say, don't quote me, but I want to say David was at McDonald's for about 30, 40 years. I know he spent the well amount of his career at McDonald's. And he was really, really good friends with who my mentor is to this day, who became my mentor from that introduction. Bob Stewart, who just retired as the vice president of the North American supply chain for McDonald's. He introduced me to Bob, and from the rest is history from there. And I think that's just a testament to what I said before about connections are everything. Who you know can push you into rooms that you never saw yourself in, that you never even knew existed. And I'm so grateful for Chicago Scholars and what you all do in the city and how you all genuinely care about the students and the youth that come through the program.
Malcolm, what's crazy is that interaction with you and David. Shout out to David, by the way, and Chris Freiberger, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a second. Came like really on the impetus of me first getting here. So I came to Chicago Scholars in May of 2018. I actually pulled it up. I went back to look because when we knew we were doing this interview, I wanted to think about like what, the full circle moment with you. And when I met you, November 2018, I meet David Small and Chris Freiberger. Chris was a retired McDonald's employee too as well. And they both were like, look, we want to do something. We want to support Chicago Scholars in some way. We've got some time to give. And we were working on building Sasha and I, Pena, who used to be our managing director of career and leadership advancement here. We're building out the career resources at Chicago Scholars. And so we sat down with David, we sat down with Chris. They had a lot of expertise and friends who were in the space of human resources, career support. We put together this winter career and leader event that you were speaking about, and they volunteered. They actually brought their friends in from McDonald's. That is actually, I think, also how we got our connection now with board member Oliver Bavon at McKinsey. And all these amazing things happened out of that event. We repeated that event a few times prior to the pandemic and even a couple after. But the power, what you're talking about is the power of relationships, right? David and Chris helped us build our leadership work here. They had expertise in that. They actually sent me to this conference called the Fred Leadership Conference in 2018, where I heard from a speaker at the time who was talking about the VUCA world we were entering into. It's a military term, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. and how to lead through VUCA. And I wasn't even CEO yet. And even in that interaction, that meeting of them allowed me to sit with someone who poured into me to teach me skills and concepts that I'm leading and using now 6.5 years later. 6.5 years later, the relationship, you've been promoted and moved through the McDonald's world a few times, got you from Denver back to Chicago on your own merit, but your brilliance, but the power of relationship. Maybe speak a little bit more. A wide audience we've got, young people, alum, potential scholars, current scholars, some of our supporters watching. Maybe just share how the power of relationship, and maybe even another example, has driven to the current amount of success you've had in your career, and why you value networks and networking so much.
So I'm on my third row at McDonald's, right? And this is kind of the same example. I'll give another one after this one, but kind of the same example. But I'm on my third row at McDonald's, right? And in these 3 rows, I've probably had maybe 10 interviews all together. Every single interview I've had with McDonald's has started off with the notion that Bob Stewart called on my behalf to speak of my character, to speak to my work ethic, to speak to why whoever the hiring manager was should hire me for that role. And that came from that connection I made at that Chicago Scholars event. I remember when I first met, so how it worked was Davis sent the email, connected me on email with Bob. And Bob was like, hey, Malcolm, I want to get you to McDonald's headquarters for a job shadowing day. Came to the job shadowing. I spent the whole day here, multiple meetings, sat in on meetings with suppliers, different things to kind of learn the world of McDonald's. And when I had the opportunity to meet with Bob, Bob said one thing, and I tell him to this day that he messed up when he said it to me because he didn't know who he was talking to at the moment. And he said, the one thing I dislike about your generation is I'll meet a young person, I'll tell them to stay connected, and I'll never hear from them again. And that was my sophomore year, right before I turned 21. That was my sophomore year in January or February, one of them. From that moment on, I set an iPhone reminder every single month on the first of the month to reach out to Bob Stewart. I still have those messages in my LinkedIn of me just shooting him messages. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Hey, Bob, I'm getting close to graduation. Like my first role at McDonald's, I had reached out to him and let him know, like, hey, Bob, I'm graduating in a year or so. I really want to have my job search wrapped up by December so that my second semester, I'm not worried. And he connected me with the person who ended up hiring me for my first role. My second role, the person used to be under him on the team that he led a few years ago. My third role, he was a big name in supply chain at the time. My third role was with supply chain, right? So I think that just speaks to the power of relationship. The second thing I'll talk about is about you, Jeff, in a relationship that you and I have built. So, in 2021, or I believe it was 2021, I started the initiative, the P, where I really wanted to raise $20,000 to donate back to my high school, Phillips High School on the south side of Chicago, to implement a STEM department. I came to you and just poured my ideas on you about what I was looking to do, for the school, how much money I was looking to raise. And you connected me with 3 or 4 individuals that all ended up donating to my fund to raise that $20,000. So the power of relationship is the number one thing I leave with anyone on this call. I try to make sure that I don't leave a sour taste in anyone's mouth. I try to make sure that anyone that's around me or interacted with me has nothing but positive things to say. I keep my work ethic high at all times. What you see is what you get. And I'm really a advocate of the fact that who you know is how far you go. And so anyone on this call, I advise you to just take advantage of those relationships. Jeff and I had just met maybe 2 years before that, I believe, before I kicked off that P initiative. And Jeff had learned me and him had interacted multiple different times to learn who I was, what I was about, what I was looking to do. And from day one, I've had Jeff's support in every single thing, every single venture that I've attempted, that I've sought out for. I've always had Jeff's support. And not only Jeff's support, but Jeff has brought the support of so many. He's brought the support of Chicago Scholars. He's brought the support of Chicago Cubs. He's brought the support of 100 Black men. He's brought the support of any and everyone needed. The Obama Foundation. So I can go on and on to give example after example, but I just say make sure that you're building relationships and make sure that you're building strong relationships where the person feels committed to you and able, confident that they can invest in you and your future and you'll take advantage of.
I want to put that on a t-shirt and quote you. It might end up on something. Who you know is how far you go. I really hope y'all heard that. And also heard, the point that Malcolm made around the follow up and follow through. Shout out to Mr. Stewart. I feel that way often sometimes too. I'll tell a scholar or a young person, first you got to follow up, and then you got to remind me, because we don't, we get a little older, we don't intentionally forget things, but we literally have, if you look at my inbox or you see my desk of things that I'm supposed to do, it's not that it's a lack of desire to want to help. So if I say I'm going to help any young person out there, or Chicago Scholars is an organization, we want to help you. Sometimes we need a little bump because it's on a list of things that we want to make sure you're at the top. So like, it's that consistency of that every month you sending that message, still. It's funny you say that, because as I'm talking to you now, I'm like, I need to go email David Small, Chris Freiberg. I need to just see how they're doing. And I've been practicing that more now that out of the pandemic, we got really transactional with relationships because we were engaging mostly over virtual means. We weren't really with people anymore. And so that a degree and ability to build real, authentic relationships is something that like I've been focusing on, and even leading the organization, asking us to get back to convening people, getting scholars together. Let's pivot a little bit. I want to ask you, there's been a lot of talk about the current job market, and a lot of discussion around jobs that should or should not require a college degree. And what trends are you seeing in your work? What's your thoughts on the topic?
I see a large trend in entrepreneurs without college degrees. Every day there's a new entrepreneur. There's somebody taking on a new entrepreneur journey. My opinion is individuals should be able to pick their own journey and shouldn't be forced to do anything that they don't feel is what they're desired to do. Right? I feel like when you force someone to do something, that's when you don't get the most positive result. So I realized I am someone who realized that school may not be for everyone. I'm a huge advocate for the fact that as long as you have a dream, but not only a dream, a plan outlined of how you're going to turn that dream into a reality, you're just fine. I don't know who's religious on the call, but an ounce of faith it take you a long way, right? So as long as you have that dream, that will, that faith and that drive to go get what you're looking to get, I feel like there's nothing that could turn you away or stop you.
I'm a firm believer of that, and I'm a big believer in pathways. I think everybody has a defined pathway, and college isn't for everyone out there. What I'll say, and I've been telling folks this, that if you have the aptitude for it, especially if you're out there and you graduated from school and you got a solid track record of grades, GPA, your test scores are solid, I tell everybody to give college a shot, even if you go local. Take classes, because I have a young person I've been mentoring for a while who's got his own construction company, and he's doing really, really, really well. But he talks about the urging I gave him many years ago to just go to DePaul because he got really great scholarships. And he's like, look, I'm not using a third of what I learned, but 2/3 of it I really still use around business, managing my money, understanding things like compound interest. And the other thing that he got from it has been helping him is relationships. And I always say the value of college, the degree matters, it does, but it's really a piece of paper that verifies your ability to be able to learn a particular set of skills, both tacit and domain knowledge, right? The bigger value is everybody that you meet along the way. So like the Howard Network in Chicago, there's probably not many like it, honestly. Not only are people who are very successful in achieving things, but then so connected and insular to other people across the country. You literally can get to, heck, the previous vice president in a few degrees of separation, vice presidents at Nike, at any company you could imagine. And leveraging that is really important. I think, especially when we talk about thinking about work, jobs, and the ability to even build and grow your entrepreneurial business. When you graduated, you came back to Chicago. A lot of folks do that and they come back here as a young person. What would you recommend to someone who's graduating, coming back to the city in general, just general like tips? And then, what could companies do better to help them operate, to make them more appealing for young people just starting out?
I say my advice to the youth is just surround yourself with like-minded individuals. It's easy to get lost in the city. It's easy to get distracted. You got to surround yourself with people who are where you're looking to go, or they're on the same path as you, right? You got to surround yourself with like-minded individuals that are high aspiring believers, and that'll set you up for success. I'm a big advocate about the company you keep is almost the most important thing that you must pay attention to, right? But when I think about what the city and the companies can do to make Chicago more appealing, there's only one word that comes to mind, and that's invest. And the only way to invest is not financially. You got to invest genuinely, with your time, with your resources, with your opportunities, with your commitments, everything, right? We have so much talent here, so much grit, so much hustle, so much motivation, but not enough opportunities, not enough people who are looking to teach the youth who may not know anything. I talk about a lot that when you're growing up in the inner city of Chicago, you don't see. It's sad to say, but when you grow up when you look in poverty in Chicago, you see four things: you see a liquor store, you see a church, you see boarded up homes, and you see someone strung out, right? And when you think about that, it's really hard for someone, a young person, to really be motivated and really understand how big this city is and how big this world is when those are the four things that they see when they walk out their house, right? So we need the city, we need the companies to pour into our youth and just show them how much the city and most importantly the world has to offer, because your mind is everything. And when you give I'm a big advocate. I know I keep saying I'm a big advocate of different things, but I'm a big advocate in the fact that when you show someone opportunity, when you give someone an opportunity and the resources to succeed, they will in most situations. So I think the city and companies need to invest, and not only invest, but invest genuinely and carefully. Don't just invest just to say, hey, I gave X amount of dollars to this neighborhood. No, did you go spend time in that neighborhood? Did you get to learn the people in that neighborhood? Did you get to understand what they're looking for, what they need, where they're lacking at, and then put your money behind whatever they need, whatever wherever areas they're lacking at, to help them grow and help them become what they're looking to go into.
So, last question for you: big vision, 10 to 20 years. Chicago has made the right investments. We've invested back in our neighborhoods and communities. What does that look like from your purview? What is that optimal vision of this city look and feel like?
A city that's thriving and continuing to flourish. There's so much violence in our city, but it's due to the lack of opportunity. I really think so. It's due to the youth not having the means to get anything other than by taking it, right? So I think it just looks like a city that's flourishing, a city that's loving, caring. A city we're home. Chicago is home of the heavyweights. There's so much talent here, and it's obvious. You could go to every single industry. It don't matter what industry you go to. You could go to every single industry and name a heavyweight in that industry that's from Chicago, Illinois, right? So I think it just looks like there's so much talent here. If we just took the time to invest in our homegrown talent, we'll be able to change the landscape of our city. It won't be easy. It won't happen overnight, but we'll be able to do it. You hear so much about individuals from Chicago going other places to be valued, appreciated, and supported in whatever venture they may be involved with. If we invest in our people here, the city of Chicago would be it's the number one city in the world already, but it'll go through the roof.
Look, folks, you heard it all from a young man I admire. I want to say that, Malcolm, to you directly. I admire your brilliance, your leadership. I've had the pleasure to get to know you and your family over these last few years, and I'm just really and continue to be excited about what you're doing as a scholar, as a leader, with Project Gratitude, with Gratitude Clothing, at McDonald's, the way you give back, and with Phillips. I want to thank you for joining. And to those of you out there, you know, I have a favorite quote. A dear friend of mine, Xavier Ramey, always says, he says, power without love is abusive. Love without power is anemic and useless. And if we think about investing with power and love, we can make the vision Malcolm just outlined come true. Thank you for joining us out there. College Matters. We started this podcast series as a way to delve into real stories, challenges, wins, and insights from our community, our scholars, the colleges we work to support, our corporate partners, and the civic community, to have real discussions about the insights and things that can make ultimately our city and our world better. And I also want to end by, expressing my sincere condolences to the McCaskey family on the passing of Virginia McCaskey, which happened today. They're a great supporter of Chicago Scholars. George has become a great friend of the organization. And so I want to express my condolences to someone who, for many of her years, have invested with power and love to our city. Thank you for joining. We'll be back February 20th. Stay tuned for the guests. We got some exciting upcoming guests, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.